What's up everybody, it's your boy CB back at another video. In this video I'm going to be discussing how you guys can make yourself the perfect HUD based on however many fingers you play. This video is going to be focusing on more the methods for how to do it than like just giving you a specific HUD, because I don't think there's any HUD that works for anyone. In my personal opinion, I don't think there's any one HUD that just is going to work for everybody. And I think you have to figure out how to make the best HUD for you. And there's a few different techniques that I think are really good for doing it. So I'm going to be telling you kind of how I made mine and what you want to consider when making your HUD. The gameplay is going to be a 23 kill. I got 23 kills in this game, and then my teammates also got decent kills. So you guys can see kind of how I play with my HUD. Personally, I play with 6 fingers. And how I made this HUD was I used my HUD that I had on 4 fingers and just moved the buttons around a little bit. But I put them in specific locations. So since I use 6 fingers, I wanted to have a separate finger that presses the build button, a separate finger that like shoots and swings the pickaxe and places builds, like when I'm holding down the build button, stuff like that. So I use my middle finger on the left hand to like pickaxe or shoot, or when I'm building, like I hold that down obviously. But I wanted to have that finger main focus just to do that, because I think that's extremely important. So I didn't want to be mishitting things. Like I didn't want to ever mishit that button. And since I don't have to move my middle finger around much, I always hit the builds. Like I don't ever mess that up. My next finger is my left pointer finger, and I use that to aim, crouch, and to switch from building back to combat. And I think that that's just enough to the point where I'm not really it's very rare that I'll mishit. Sometimes I do, but there's only a few buttons, so it's not that difficult just to move around. Also, I want you guys to notice I play on an iPad Pro, but my hands are really big compared to like most of you, I'm guessing, because I'm an adult and like my hands are fairly big for like a normal person, I guess. So I have all my buttons really big. If you have tiny hands, it might benefit you to make your buttons smaller, because obviously if your hands are smaller, it'll be easier for you to hit the buttons that are smaller. I guess that's just my opinion. You guys can do whatever you want, make them huge if you like, even with small hands. But then next, I think your thumbs, if you're using 6 fingers, don't put other buttons for your thumbs. Just have your left thumb be to move around, and then your right thumb be to aim around, if that makes sense. So one of the reasons I switched to 6 finger was because I was using the same finger, my right thumb, to switch from building and non-building to while aiming. So like if I was like running or something and then someone shot at me, I'd have to switch to the build and turn around with the same thumb, and that obviously has like problems. But I'd gotten so used to it felt normal. That's just like one situation where that's a problem. It was just overall a big problem, so I had to switch it up. And that's the reason I switched to 6 fingers, one of the biggest reasons, so that I could have a separate finger for building. And then, so my other 2 fingers are my right pointer and my right middle finger. My right pointer I have where like all the builds are and all the guns, and also my jump button. And then my right middle finger is my edit button, my ping button. And I also use that to hit the floors, and I use my pointer finger to hit the pyramids and the stairs. But that's just how I set up my HUD. Now I'm going to be telling you guys how you should set up your HUDs based on your fingers. So if you're using 4 fingers, what I think is most important would be just make sure that they're somewhat evenly distributed. Like the buttons aren't all on one side. That was a problem I had with my old HUD. All my buttons were on one side. So what would happen is I would be mishitting so much because all of my buttons were on one side, and like eventually I got used to it and I wasn't mishitting as much, but like it's just not going to be as consistent and great if all your buttons are on one side. So like if you want to have the jump button on one side, you might want to not have something that you have to hit often when you hit the jump button. So like my jump button, I use my right pointer finger. It's not good to have like the build button and the jump button, because you might have to be hitting those at like the same time, stuff like that. So have like different fingers hit things that you have to hit at like the same time, if that makes sense. But I think it's really good to just kind of make slight changes as you go. So like whatever HUD you guys have right now, I would keep the main things the same. As long as like you can do decent stuff, like if your building is decent, I wouldn't move your status bar around that much, like where you place your builds and stuff. I would leave it kind of where it is and then move other things, because you don't want to change so much that it just gets like impossible to be good. You want to make slight changes over time to whatever you have currently. I also think that if you're playing on 2 fingers, I recommend switching to 4, but I'm going to give my best tips for 2-finger players. If you're playing on 2 fingers, I honestly would recommend that, I guess, set up each individual build button, because you know how you see how I have like the stair, pyramid, and floor buttons on my screen, so I can instantly like press them to like replace and do that kind of stuff. If I were you, I would set up those in a way that I could easily tap them with my thumbs. Might even split them up. I would definitely try to make the same amount of buttons on each side, because you're gonna have to be jumping all over the place with your thumbs. But I would definitely think about doing that. I don't know how 2-finger players do it. Some of them are cracked though. But I'd probably put like the aim button. I would probably have it kind of similar to mine and just have them all really near each other so I could tap them quick and then jump back. It just seems almost impossible to be really good. And then another important thing is the buttons that aren't really that important, I would put them in places that you're not going to be hitting them as often, just because like my launch pad button, I almost never have to hit that, so I have that way out of the way. Like I'm never going to miss hit that. I have to lift my hand up to like reach over and tap it. I think it's really important to do stuff like that. Another thing is I would recommend putting, you see those 3 bars in the top middle of my screen to like open up the menu? I would put that somewhere you're never going to accidentally hit it, because when you hit that in the middle of a fight, it's going to completely screw you over. So that's why I have mine way up there. What are some other tips? Like, I personally made changes that I've never seen other people make, just because I think it works best for me. Like I see my minis above my pickaxe button, my shoot button, whatever you want to call it, is right above that, just because I always have heals there and I never have to hit it quick. That's why it's not like part of the rest of the quick bar, or my whatever you call that, like where all the stuff is, the inventory slots. That's why I moved it way over there, so it's way out of the way, because you don't really have to quick hit your heals. And I would also kind of see what feels best for your hand, because where your hands are on your screen is where your button should be. You shouldn't have to be moving your hands to hit the button. You should move the buttons so that they go perfectly with your hands. That's just my personal advice on that. I think it just makes sense. Like if your hands are more comfortable in one spot, that's where the button should be. Unless you were like really used to it, then I guess that's the only reason it would be kind of better to not have the buttons where your hands were most comfortable. But I mean, honestly, like they should just, like I've set up my HUD so that my fingers just go perfectly with where the buttons are. And I've only been playing with this HUD for like 2 weeks-ish, but it's already gotten so much smoother and better for me. And I think in like a few weeks I'll be so much better. But yeah, I hope that some of these tips were helpful. I know they weren't the most direct tips, but like I just don't recommend changing too much when you do go to change things. I think you should see what feels best for your hands, and then make sure the essential buttons aren't like don't like interfere with each other, so like you don't like hit the wrong, what am I trying to say, like you don't mishit things that are like the essentials should be kept first. Like your big butt, you should make them big, bold, like whatever you want to do to make sure that put them in like spots that you're going to be hitting them consistently, because you just want to make sure that the most important stuff like the jump, the build, the item slots, or you're not going to be mishitting those. It's the buttons that aren't as important that should be the ones that get mishit more often, because like the most important stuff like the shoot button should not be a mishit button. So that's why mine's big and I only have 1 finger using it. If you just like follow tips like that with making your HUD, no matter how many fingers you use, it'll make it so much easier for you. But yeah, I hope this was helpful to you guys, because you guys always ask me for these tips for my HUD, but I don't always have the best answers. I hope this was helpful though. If it was, please drop a like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.